first question is, how has NagaCorp been dealing with the general slump in international visitors, and who have you been targeting to bring back to the property and fill that void?
Well, certainly in the time reference that we outlined, really since March going forward, travel restrictions has hit Cambodia like most places in the world. So we operated quite normally with obviously some COVID-19 health guidelines through the end of the first quarter. But we were forced to shut down the entire second quarter. So when we reopened third quarter, we had two phases: an initial limited opening around the 6th, 7th of July, and then we received authorization a couple of weeks later to a more expanded full-scale opening. We very much relied on the local market. When I say local market, much of our statistical accomplishments of success during the third quarter is really from most of the visitation from people in Cambodia rather than tourism. Obviously, tourism had a big contribution in the past, and we anticipate that it will have a significant contribution in the future. But it was really the local expat community, very significantly. Chinese businessmen that are based there were still traveling into Cambodia. We've seen a lot of dynamics attached to the growth of Phnom Penh, not only as a capital city, but the commercial city. And I think you're well aware that over the last 7, 8 years, whether it's infrastructure projects, new hotels and tourism related venues, they've been under construction in Cambodia. So that continues to attract a lot of small businessmen who have relocated there, but also a lot of business interests that are serving the Phnom Penh area. Quite honestly, the mass market, the local, call it Cambodians, whether it's expats or Cambodians with foreign passports, they've always made a very significant contribution to the mass market. We've obviously been doing a lot of promotions, whether it's offering free complimentary type of cuisine or hotel lodging for a weekend and this and that to bring in more of the local crowd. But I also think that, it's quite natural that when people have more time on their hand and obviously restrictions in their movement, we've seen a very strong response from that broad local community. If I had to cite any key factor that has contributed quite significantly to the growth of that mass market, it has certainly been, it's all tied to the growth, the relationship between the Cambodian and Chinese government. Much of the significant infrastructure projects going around the country involve Chinese construction companies working with local labor, a lot of the investment for these properties. So there's a lot of ties and a lot of connections, and then there's a lot of Chinese businessmen on the ground who reside a good part of the year in the Phnom Penh area.
What about this China Tourism Blacklist? Nothing's really come out of this blacklist at the moment. There's no confirmed list of which countries. There's no confirmed of which countries are on that list. But does that concern you and NagaCorp at all?
To be quite honest with you, we closely reviewed and analyzed the public commentary. It came from a few different sources within China, the Ministry of Tourism, also some comments about the Public Security Bureau, but lacked obviously specificity. Some articles talked about online gaming as being the area that the blacklist. And also they talked a little bit about obviously those companies that are using Chinese funding to build gaming facilities that target. We're quite confident that we don't fall into any of those categories. We don't participate in online gaming. Some time ago, we made a decision not to get involved in online gaming. Some of it was truly because of the dynamics that we were very much involved in Chinese tourism and recognized the sensitivity of the issue. And then as a result of not participating in online gaming, and I can only speculate that some areas, certainly Sihanoukville had become a hotbed, and I think probably at the urging or dialogue with the Chinese government, action was taken in Sihanoukville to revoke those licenses. And obviously there's a lot of public commentary regarding the level of online gaming operating, for example, out of the Philippines. So I don't think we fall into that category in terms of online gaming. So I don't think we have much concern about being on a blacklist. And also, if you look at our property, whether it's Naga 1, Naga 2, Naga 3, source of funding has either come from the founder, majority shareholder, and the company to pay for all our projects. So we don't have, third-party beneficial donors that are involved in from China in funding our operations. So a long-winded way of responding to that question would be is that I don't think Naga as a organization, either on the integrated resort side or the gaming side, would be a likely target of any blacklisting. And, not enough information is out there, but what's known to date, I would say that, we'd be on the bottom end of that concern.
I guess the last question is where to next? If outside of Cambodia, what countries are piquing your interest right now that, you're keeping your eyes on?
Well, again, I've been involved with Naga since 2005, late 2005, early 2006. And I've traveled with Dr. Chen from Mongolia to Kazakhstan, just to name a few. My point is we've always been open and we look for opportunities, and we look very much so in the past for emerging jurisdictions rather than established jurisdiction. Again, places where capital costs on the front end, where taxes were reasonable, and the environment for us to operate had a measure of autonomy. In other words, let's say if you were going into a place in Western Europe, oftentimes the taxation might be prohibitive, the amount of regulation as far as when you open this and that. So we've been looking for a long time, and some of it depends upon what happens in those countries as far as gaming and regulation. We obviously have moved forward on our project in Vladivostok. Vladivostok, we looked at as an opportunity where you have basically a European city in Asia. And, we think we have a reasonable investment there, something that we are covering well cost-wise. We've spent, I think, about $220 million to date. We spent another 100-some million before we complete it. That'll be about 2022. COVID-19 has impacted. There's been a lot of travel restrictions and difficulty with labor issues there, but that's moving forward. Probably second half 2022 will be complete. And really right now, much of our clientele or customer base will be travelers back and forth from China into Russia, and those provinces right there, because of the relationship and dynamics of border provinces and the proximity of big cities like Harbin, the increase in commerce and relationship between China and Russia, we expect to have both a Russian customer base and Chinese, but obviously absent COVID-19, the ability of people to come in and stay for longer visas that have been put in place in recent years, that will return to normal. So I think our timing will be good there as well. Don't get me wrong, we always have looked in our backyard, Vietnam, but they have their own legal and regulatory issue. Thailand obviously hasn't had any real movement. So at the end of the day, we looked at our success and the fundamentals that were occurring in Cambodia, and that's why we've continued to concentrate our base of operation there, but we're wide open to go elsewhere. You know, we, like others, have observed and try to grasp all the, call it guidelines and regulatory pronouncements of Japan, but that's still unfolding. So we're not committed one way or the other, but we have an open mind to a good opportunity under those type of, call it, elements that I talked about. You know, we're not interested in competing with people who are prepared to spend 15, 20 billion US on, you know, facilities. That doesn't make sense to us. If we can get into a market where, you know, we look at our cost expenditure combined with return on investment for our shareholders, combined with growth and develop in a city that or area that enjoys economic development opportunities.
Well, what about Myanmar?
Well, I can say that we've made visitations there. I think we'd have to, you know, Myanmar certainly is a population-wise and the potential for positive change. I think it's there. Again, you have to look at issues pertaining to political stability, where they are in the stages of regulatory development, you know, whether or not you have reasonable protections under the law, you know, what risks are attached. So we certainly wouldn't preclude that, but I think they have a little bit ways to go before it becomes clear on the, call it the, both the legal decision to provide legal gaming and how many casinos, et cetera, combined with greater clarity investment-wise. What you don't want to do, and you see it often, is people go into an area and then 2 years later something gets reversed. So we do our homework. I can say part of our success over the years is that we're fiscally very conservative. We're very cost conscious. And if you look at, you know, the level of our investment so far, like in Cambodia, and what we've built there for the costs that we have, you know, we've been pretty prudent, and now we're moving up in scale of quality of our facilities, and obviously going back and refurbishing and updating our original property. So we're wide open and poised for a good opportunity, but, you know, it's not like I could share with you that, you know, we haven't done bank borrowing. You know, we've gone through some bond exercises, but, you know, if you look back at the 25-year history of Naga, you know, when we listed and for many, many years after, no debt, no gearing. And that goes back to the mindset of the founder, is that be patient, gain a good understanding and knowledge of where you're operating, the risks associated with it, and manage those risks. And that's what we've done, I think, a pretty good job. And similarly, we would apply those same type of evaluations and analysis in other places that we go, because every place is unique. Certainly Russia is going to be a different operating environment than Southeast Asia.
I mean, either way, it sounds like very, very exciting times ahead for NagaCorp and for yourself, Tim. Just wanted to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been enlightening, and I look forward to seeing what NagaCorp comes up with next.
Very much appreciate it, Felix. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit more about Naga.